If you think your friends ride for you, let me tell you. Let me tell you about these white blood cells. They ride for you even harder, okay? They see something in your body that does not belong to you. They will attack it, no questions asked. Hey guys, welcome back to MicroJai, where we do all things microbiology. And today we're going to look at blood cells. So today we're going to look at my blood cells. But it's okay. I'm going to make a blood smear. Blood smear? Yeah, blood smear. A blood smear is performed by using a lancet to prick your finger. You have a drop of blood, like how diabetics do when they check their blood. Prick your finger, get a drop of blood, put it on a microscope slide. Then you're going to take another microscope slide to kind of smear that drop of blood so we can like separate all the cells so it's not all clumped up, and we can differentiate these cells. And yeah, so let's get it popping. Let's get it started. Put on gloves so we're sanitary. I have the alcohol prep pads, and then I have a push button lancet. So how this works is you take this lancet, you take off this little piece here, and then you press it. But the good things about this is that the needle is not sticking out when you press it. It's still on the inside, so it's safe in case, you know, the kitties are around or whatever and they touch it, they won't get pricked. I'm not going to show me pricking myself just because I don't want YouTube to, you know, I don't want YouTube to block my video. But I'll show a diagram somewhere. So I have my alcohol prep pad. I'm going to wipe my finger. I'm going to do my middle finger. No particular reason. I just gonna use my middle finger. Then I'm going to take off this little piece here and then put on my finger and press. Okay. Woo. Wasn't bad. On a scale of 1 to 10, it was probably like a 1.5. Wasn't bad at all. So I'm gonna just do a little squeeze just so we can get, you know, enough. And then take the other side to do the smear. I'm gonna let it dry for a second. So this is my blood smear here. You can kind of see it there. Don't mind the stains. This is the lancet. So the needle's on the inside, but that's safe. So I'm going to take my right to blood stain solution, twist the cap off. I'm only going to need enough drops just to cover it, so I'm just going to do, honestly, that much is all I need. And then I'm going to put a timer for 1 minute. Once this timer go off, I'm just going to take my plastic pipettes, plastic little squeeze pipette with some distilled water and just kind of wash the stain off. So it's been a minute, so I'm going to take my plastic pipettes with some distilled water and then just cover the microscope slide. Just kind of wash off the right stain, twist that up. As a scientist, you get good at using one hand. Rinse it off on this pad here. And then I'm just going to let it air dry. But that's what the blood smear looks like. Just prop it up here and let it dry. And we'll come back and look at it under the microscope. So I'm going to start with the thorax. So these are my blood cells. I think that's just like a little ridge on where the blood drop landed. So I'm gonna scoot over to see the separated cells, the isolated cells. These cells look separated. Let's look closer. Okay, and I see some white blood cells too. So these small circles are your erythrocytes, or red blood cells. So with erythrocytes, they are a flattened concave shape They have no nucleus, so they have no DNA. The purpose of red blood cells is to transport oxygen all over the body, and in order to transport the most oxygen, they have to be like a circular concave shape so that they have enough surface area to pack in as much oxygen as they can. So with red blood cells, there are pros and cons to having no nucleus and having that shape. The flat and concave shape of red blood cells allows them to be more flexible. So you have your arteries, your veins, and your capillaries. Your capillaries are very small. So your red blood cells need to be able to squeeze and maneuver, you know, everywhere with no problem. In each red blood cells are these proteins called hemoglobin. So hemoglobin is a protein where the oxygen binds to. So every time you inhale, you are filling your hemoglobin molecules with oxygen. Cons of not having organelles or nucleus is they cannot make protein, they cannot divide and replicate, and they have limited repair. However, the pros of not having a nucleus is that they cannot be infected by viral infection, because viruses need DNA in order to infect, and if you don't got no DNA, then you can't get infected. Red blood cells play a huge part in sickle cell anemia, which is prevalent in African Americans. So sickle cell anemia is an inherited blood cell disorder. It is caused by a point mutation in the hemoglobin gene. So it can be inherited, so your children can have it, your grandchildren can have it if you have it. So individuals with sickle cell anemia, their red blood cells look very different. So instead of circular in a concave shape like you see here, they look like stiff rods. So because they look like stiff rods, they don't have enough surface area to transport as much oxygen possible to everywhere in your body. So if you can't transport, you know, the maximum oxygen that your body needs, you know, stuff starts to fail. I'm not a doctor, so, you know, I can't tell you all the gist of sickle cell anemia, but just know that that is why people with sickle cell anemia has those problems. Sickle cell anemia plays a huge part in malaria. Malaria is a disease caused by a parasite. It's spread by an infected mosquito. Individuals who are heterozygous for the gene, so for the sickle cell anemia gene, they are protected against malaria. So say dad has sickle cell anemia. I'm going to abbreviate sickle cell anemia with SCA. So sickle cell anemia is a recessive trait, meaning you need both recessive alleles in order to express sickle cell anemia. So I'm going to use little a to show that these two alleles are recessive. So because he has the same alleles for the gene, he is homozygous. Homo means same, zygous means, I don't know. But yes, dad has sickle cell anemia because he has both the recessive needed for sickle cell anemia. So say mom is normal. That means she has the dominant trait that masks the recessive trait. But because she doesn't have sickle cell anemia, she has big A, both dominant alleles, and she is homozygous also, but for the dominant. So say mom and dad has a child. So the child will get an allele from both parents. So she would get a big A from mom and a little a from dad. So because she has two different alleles, big A and little a, she is heterozygous. So because she is heterozygous, she has the recessive allele for sickle cell anemia, but she has the big A that masks the little a. Therefore, she has sickle cell anemia, but not to the extent to which her dad has it. People who are heterozygous for sickle cell anemia, all of their blood cells are not those stiff rods that I was explaining earlier. So it's kind of like half normal shaped red blood cells and half stiff rods. So because it's kind of half and half, your immune system is able to recognize the stiff rods and be like, this ain't right. As they attack the misshapen red blood cells, they're also attacking the parasite that infects those red blood cells. That's why individuals that are heterozygous are protected. Okay, so now we're at 100x, and we can clearly see these red blood cells. So this cell here, so this cell is a little bigger. Oop. So this cell is a little bigger than the red blood cells. So the small ones surrounding it are the red blood cells, and the fat one in the middle, that is a white blood cell. Specifically, that is a neutrophil. And neutrophils are your first responders in a bacterial and fungal infection. If you think your friends ride for you, let me tell you. Let me tell you about these white blood cells. They ride for you even harder, okay? If they see something in your body that does not belong to you, they will attack it, no questions asked. That's what you want your immune system to do. You want your immune system to attack anything foreign. So every cell in your body, they have these proteins that recognize that they belong to you. So for example, for me, every cell in my body, they know they belong to J. All my cells belong to J. If I encounter a pathogen or an antigen, a pathogen is anything that causes disease. So if I encounter, the coronavirus, say the coronavirus go in my nostril and in my bloodstream, my white blood cells gonna be like, who is you? Who are you? So neutrophils are your most numerous white blood cells. They account for 50 to 70% of your white blood cells. What they do is they phagocytize. So phagocytize or phagocytosis means cell eating. So literally they eat the foreigners and just like destroy them. They will like eat foreign invaders. That's insane. So you can kind of tell what kind of diseases you have based on the number of white blood cells that you have. If you have a higher number than that means something wrong. That means something wrong. That means they're in battle mode. Okay, that means your neutrophils are in battle mode and they're whooping somebody's tail. If you have a high percentage of neutrophils in your body, that means you have a bacterial or a fungal infection. So if you have a low concentration of neutrophils, that means you are undergoing radiation or chemotherapy, and they're kind of disrupting the proper number of your neutrophils. This here you have a lymphocyte. 20 to 30% of all your white blood cells. They have a large nucleus. These cells are responsible for your adaptive immunity. So your adaptive immunity is your acquired immunity. So when you first encounter a pathogen, bacteria or something, your body takes a minute in order to combat that bacterial infection. And actually it's never seen it before. So it's using all of its mechanics and everything to try to fight off that bacterial infection. However, once it sees that infection the first time, it will always remember it. That's why the second time you get infected, it's always a faster response. So that's why it's very important to get vaccinated, because the vaccination is your first introduction to that, that pathogen, right? And once you get that first introduction, your body remembers it forever. So the next time you encounter it, your white blood cells are like, nah, I remember you from last time. You gotta bounce. Lymphocytes are also antigen presenting cells. So what that means is that they engulf the pathogen, right? They eat it up, blah, 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 blah. But then they present a piece of that antigen on the surface of their membrane. So basically, like, they get in a fight and your white blood cell won. And then they take like a snapshot of what the pathogen look like, and they going around and be like, if you see the pathogen that look like this, whoop their butt. It's a wrap. They're not invited. They can't get in the club. It's a wrap. So that's kind of what antigen presenting is. That means they are presenting the antigen to all the other white blood cells in your body, telling them to pull up if they see it. If you have a high number of lymphocytes, so if it's greater than 20 or 30% of your white blood cells, that means you have a viral infection, boo. That means you got a viral infection, or you have chronic lymphocyte leukemia. Leukemia is a blood cancer. So what cancer is just rapidly dividing cells. You don't want too many of no cells. However, if you have a low concentration of lymphocytes in your bloodstream, that may mean you have a HIV infection or radiation and chemotherapy. What HIV does, they affect your helper T cells, which is a lymphocyte. These little tiny purple dots, these are your platelets. So your platelets are responsible for wound healing. So you get a scratch, and then what they do is they clot up the blood vessel so that it can repair itself. So your next white blood cell are monocytes. So these white blood cells differentiate into macrophages and dendritic cells. And what these cells do, they secrete cytokines. So cytokines are like the messenger proteins. So say you get an infection in your left toe, and then these cells secrete these cytokines to tell all your other white blood cells to pull up to the left toe. Because we have a battle here. We gotta get rid of these people right here. There's a bacteria in the left toe, and I need y'all to pull up to the left toe. These cells are also antigen presenting, meaning they eat up foreign stuff and present it onto the outer membrane to show all the other cells that, you know, if you see this, you know. Same thing here. If there is a high concentration of monocytes, you have a bacterial infection, inflammation, or monocyte leukemia, which is the blood cancer, but specifically for monocytes. If you have a low percent, you may have endotoxemia, which is just a high concentration of toxins in your body. And we don't want that. We don't want that. So the last two white blood cells that you may see are eosinophils and basophils. So eosinophils make up 1 to 5% of all white blood cells. I'm not going to see that in my blood. I hope not. But that is because eosinophils are responsible for killing parasites, right? So if you have a parasitic infection, your eosinophils will pull up to the occasion and, you know, get rid of them. They do what they need to do to get rid of them parasites. Your last but not least white blood cells are your basophils. So these white blood cells make up less than 1% of all white blood cells. And these are responsible for allergic responses. So these tiny little dots inside of them are granules, and these granules are released, which induces an allergic response. To conclude, you have your neutrophils, your lymphocytes, your monocytes, your eosinophils, and your basophils. To remember them, you need to know NLMEB. And to help you remember those white blood cells, a lot of people use never let monkeys eat bananas. So if you want to remember all of your white blood cells, just think of that. Or you can think of nice lights minimize every blemish, you know, for all my queens and kings out there. Those are your white blood cells. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you learned something about your blood cells and the importance of what they do in order to keep your body healthy and to keep your body protected against these foreign invaders, because you encounter bacteria every day. And the white blood cells in your body already know about them. So, you know, whenever they come in contact with your body, they already got rid of them before you even notice. Before you even notice, your white blood cells are attacking your ops and you don't even know. And please like, subscribe, and share this video to teach other people about their blood cells. And have a great one.